I think we can all agree that Forspoken is one of those games that we're all worried about, assuming that you're interested in it at all, that is. I've seen a lot of different opinions online, ranging from it looks like utter trash, to the dialogue is cringe-inducing, to I think it looks okay at best. I myself was prepared to simply ignore it and let it pass by unmentioned. But then, Square Enix decided to release a demo, and out of what must have been morbid curiosity, I decided to give it a try over the recent Christmas break. I hate to say it, but I think I might actually like this. I don't really like the main character very much or a lot of the dialogue, but the gameplay, while slightly unrefined, does speak to me. I haven't dived too far into the story or the lore outside of trailers and this demo, so I don't know exactly what's going on in the game, but some of the things I saw and heard have really piqued my interest. I want to know why she was pulled into this world, I want to know how, I want to know what happened there, and I want to know the lore behind it all. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to experience most of it through the eyes of Frey, who is, in my opinion, a rather dull and vapid protagonist, but I suppose at the end of the day, you take what you can get. So what is the Forspoken demo and what can you do within it? Well, first of all, I should point out that according to the game's creative director, the demo was specifically crafted to give players a chance to experience the parkour, the combat, and some of the underlying mechanics. Apparently, the full game structure will differ to the way the demo's been presented to us, and to me, that seems a little bit of a weird thing to do. I mean, are you telling us that you've intentionally given us a demo that doesn't properly represent the full game? It definitely wouldn't be the first time that's happened, that's for sure, but still, I'm not sure what to make of this statement. It could be completely innocent, it could be poorly worded, or it could be intentionally misleading. I guess we'll have to just wait and see what it actually ends up meaning. The demo itself starts off with a trailer-like intro movie that gives you some very basic narrative threads. It explains that Frey Holland, the protagonist, was pulled into another world from present-day New York and arrived with a magical talking bracelet on her right arm. She suddenly finds herself in the mysterious and dangerous land of Athia, or Athia perhaps, and she's able to cast powerful magic and over time becomes this world's only hope. She will eventually need to confront the Tantas, mad sorceresses who used to rule over the land as well-respected and much-loved matriarchs. This is absolutely an isekai story, which, for those of you who might not be familiar with the term, refers to a story in which the character enters another unknown world and they're often quite overpowered once they get there. It's sort of like a fish out of water narrative where the random person becomes the hero of another world. It's a very common and trope-filled way of delivering a story, but frankly, I've always enjoyed the genre, so that does go a little way to giving me something in Forspoken to latch onto. Frey is, well, she's a character. I mean, there's not really anything to say about her as we simply don't know that much at this point. Some people out there seem to completely hate her and everything she says, and while I do agree that she's incredibly bland, I wouldn't say that I hate her, at least not at this point in time. She's kind of like an empty shell for us, the player, to experience the adventure through, which is true for most isekai narratives actually. So unless her being who she is relevant to the story in some major way, I don't really see why they didn't just give us the ability to create our own characters. I mean, if she's got some really interesting backstory and there's a good reason as to why she became this chosen one, that would be great. To be honest though, I kind of feel like there won't be any substance to it all, but I genuinely hope to be proven wrong. The bracelet that ends up on her arm is referred to as Cuff throughout the demo, and once again, we don't really know that much about it. That said, there was an interesting line that I heard once in the demo, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something to do with Frey asking the Cuff how he ended up in an old dusty shop in New York. See, to me, that's an intriguing question, something that actually makes me want to find out the answer. There's also mention of some kind of massive event known as the Break, and from what I can tell, it's somewhat of an apocalypse, at least for the land of Athia or Athia. You do fight some minor enemies called Break Zombies, which seem to be humans that were changed or corrupted by the Break. And again, that's some cool stuff. I want to know more about it, but I just hope the characters and the writing don't derail it and ruin what could be a memorable plot. I spent around 4 hours in this demo, and in that time I completed every single thing on the map, including looting the chests, which are marked on the map as these tiny little dots. I literally got them all. As I said earlier, I'm not sure how the full game will play out, but in the demo you're given a decent slice of the open world and a generous handful of events to complete. There's minor events like taking down a couple of enemies or activating a lookout tower, and some more major events like defending an area or defeating a world boss. Traversing the environment is generally pretty easy to do thanks to the game's magical parkour system. In my experience, it felt pretty good, but there were a few times where it fails to do what it's supposed to do. It wasn't ever what I would consider a problem though. It's not like you try to jump over a rock and then you end up glitching through the ground or anything like that. It's more like you tried to move smoothly over some rocks but kinda got a little bit snagged on one of them. The full game seems to have multiple ways for you to move around the world, so that should be cool, and hopefully they've been able to improve it all since the demo build was put together. As you explore, you'll occasionally come across these small buildings which act as safe houses. You can rest, craft items, upgrade your gear, and equip your unlocked spells. The only craftables in the demo are healing items, but you can also create a medicine pouch that allows you to hold more of those healing items, and a materials pouch that lets you hold more materials. Frey only has 2 pieces of gear to consider, and those are a cloak and a necklace. Like most armor pieces or accessories in other RPGs, these gear pieces grant bonuses to stats like defense or health, and also to different types of magic. They each have effect slots as well, allowing you to select and set a variety of beneficial buffs. Something that's a little bit out of the ordinary is the ability to paint Frey's nails. You can paint each hand differently, and each design gives you a different group of effects. So as an example, you could paint one set of nails and get extra spell damage, and then paint the other set of nails to get a quicker charge time on those spells. This isn't exactly a groundbreaking system by any means, because it's functionally identical to wearing different rings in other RPGs, but I suppose it does make sense thematically. Defeating enemies in the world and completing events gives you a currency known as mana. This mana can be spent to unlock new spells at the safe houses, or to bypass puzzles if you simply don't want to engage with them. The demo has a good number of spells to try out by default, but considering how the menus are laid out, I feel like there's going to be a rather large amount of them in the full game. I found the spell system and the controls that you use to cast them to be a little bit overwhelming at first, and it's not because it's difficult to understand, it's just that visually it looks a little bit messy. When I first saw this menu, I simply didn't understand what I was looking at. I didn't realize which spells I had, which spells I didn't have, or which ones were just upgrades. I took some time to properly read it all and slowly begun to understand what it all meant. It's definitely a cool design from a visual standpoint, but I found it to be a little bit confusing at a glance. One cool thing I do want to point out though is how the spell upgrades work. So let's say you have a spell that you really like to use and you'd like to upgrade it and make it more potent. Well, the way you do that is by equipping a challenge associated with that spell in this menu. You can have up to 3 of these challenges active at once, and when you complete one, it unlocks the improved version of the spell, which I really like. It's also worth noting that you can convert some of your already purchased spells back into mana so that you can then buy something else and try that instead. The magic itself seems to fall into different elemental categories. For example, Frey's magic is earth-based, but you also have access to Scylla or Scylla's magic, which is based on fire. I'm not sure who Scylla or Scylla is at this point in time, but I'm going to assume that you'll unlock other characters' magic in the full game and therefore new spells that go along with that. In terms of combat, as you've probably already noticed, you'll be using magic and magic alone to take down your enemies. The cool thing is that some of your magic is ranged and some of it is melee based. I don't think it's out of line to say that the combat looks a little bit jank at times, like some of the animations don't transition or flow from one to the other as well as they could. That said, when I actually play it, it doesn't feel too bad at all. I think it feels a tad heavy, and that's because there's a little bit of inertia to Frey's movement. If you've ever played something like The Division, it kind of feels a little bit like that. The characters in that game and Frey in Forspoken don't just instantly stop when you let go of the analog stick, they sort of slow down briefly and then stop. The same kind of thing is true when you start moving or if you want to quickly switch direction. Don't get me wrong though, I don't think the movement feels bad, it's just a design choice. During combat, you can actually switch between the different types of magic that you've unlocked and use the spells that you've equipped to counter the enemy that you're dealing with. If you're fighting against an airborne enemy, the flame sword isn't really going to work for you, so you can switch to Frey's earth magic and pelt them with magical rocks from a distance. You'll notice that there's a triangular shaped UI element at the bottom right of the screen, and this shows you what magic you're currently using. The bottom 2 corners of the triangle represent L2 and R2 on your controller, and the tip of the triangle is both of those buttons together. So as a quick example, let's say you're using fire magic. You equip one of your unlocked spells to L2, which is your support magic, and one of your spells to R2, which is your attack magic. You then equip a third stronger spell which activates when you press both buttons together. You've now set up your fire magic triangle, and it is worth noting that most of your skills are on a cooldown. At any time, you can switch to another type of magic, like earth magic for instance, and that will also have its own triangle of spells that you've previously set up. Now, I hope that makes some sense to you because I probably didn't explain it as well as I could. I'll try to sum it up by saying you've essentially got different types of magic and each type allows you to equip 3 of your unlocked spells to it. And that's basically it as far as I understand it. Visually, I think the game looks really good. The demo area is a little bit sparse, but it's got some nice vistas, some interesting looking enemies, and some very pretty particle effects. I played this on a PS5 and it's actually got 3 different video modes which are quality focused, ray tracing, and performance focused. It's also got a 120 FPS mode if your display supports it. If you're not interested in the performance details, then do feel free to skip to the next section, but for those that are interested, quality mode runs at a dynamic resolution between 4K and 1080p at 30 FPS. The ray tracing mode runs at a dynamic resolution between 1620p and 828p at 30 FPS. And lastly, performance mode runs at a surprising dynamic resolution, if you can believe it, of 1440p down to 720p at 60 FPS. Now, I have to say, I played this in performance mode, and in the 4 hours that I played it, there was only a few frame drops that I really noticed, and it was generally a smooth experience. Resolution-wise, I had no idea that it was 1440p at its highest and 720p at its lowest. I really didn't notice that at all. I mean, you're literally looking at what I was playing right now. You're looking at what I recorded, and low resolution or not, I think it looks pretty good, right? Or am I just crazy there? I really don't know. Let me know what you think of the visuals because I'd be interested to get some other opinions on this one. And so I think that's all there is to say about the demo. You can download it for free right now on PS5, and if you're interested in the game at all, I really suggest giving it a try before you put down any money. The full game releases for PS5 and PC on January 24th, 2023, and I do plan to review it on this channel. In my opinion, the Forspoken demo turned out to be so much better than I initially thought. Is the full game going to be any good? I honestly have no idea, but if I had to guess, I'd say that I'm probably going to like the gameplay but be deeply disappointed by the story. I hope that's not the case, but it's just a feeling I get. No single aspect of this demo was perfect to me, but I do like how it looks, I like the combat, I like the RPG elements, and the lore does seem to be pretty cool. Ultimately, I do enjoy open world games and I'm looking forward to the full release. I actually find the open world busy work that comes with these kind of games to be somewhat therapeutic and relaxing, so chances are I'm going to be okay with this one. I do think the terrible writing and the cringe factor may ruin some of the better parts of the game in the long run, but at the moment, that remains to be seen. I plan on going into it with an open mind and a genuine desire to understand the lore behind the narrative. All I can do is be fair, give it a chance, and hope that it doesn't let me down. If you enjoyed this particular video, I hope you'll consider subscribing for more. Don't worry, subscribing is completely free, but it really helps to grow the channel. If you'd like to help support what I do, then please check out the first link in the video description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.